but due to Manchester City playing Seville tonight, which we are recording prior to this, so prior to that game taking place, so do bear that in mind when looking at the market here. So it's Manchester City versus Newcastle United, and Manchester City currently 1.67 at home, Newcastle 5.6. The draw is 4.4. Both teams to score yes is 1.8, no is available at 2.1. The Asian handicap line sees Newcastle get a 3/4 of a goal head start here at 2.1, and the goal line is 2.5, and that's heavily favoured in the overs direction. So Mark, yeah, look, take it away from, I guess we maybe slept walk into Newcastle a little bit. If you look again at their summer transfer window, they seem to have just heavily invested in strength. I think Adrian touched on that a little bit in their squad depth. But look, some of the signings really stepped up. And of course, Isak, who was last season's signing, looks like he's just going to be a natural goal scorer throughout this season.
Yeah, they were definitely the standout team on week one. It was probably one of those things, how good were Newcastle and how bad were Villa, possibly a combination of both, really. But, we suggested they were too short at odds on and, believed it was the right opportunity to take them on. But they were fantastic, really. The game exploded into life with those 3 early goals. It was great entertainment, but I do think Tyrone Mings' injury definitely swung the pendulum even further in Newcastle's favour. But they didn't take the foot off the throat at all in that match. They're excellent. They were ruthless, and they completely exposed Villa's high line with no pressure on the ball. So basically, the basics of Emery ball weren't there, and Newcastle took advantage. And I think they can be real bullies at St James's Park this season, as they were last time out too. So obviously, optimism is going to be high in the camp going to the Etihad. They looked confident. They looked very capable. Defensively, we know they can be strong and resolute. The midfield looked to have a really nice balance about it, with Tonali making a great impression, Guimaraes, Jolinton, Gordon picking up where he left off from the under-21s. And as you say, you've got Wilson now in reserve for Isak, and Barnes coming off the bench as well. It's quite exciting from a Newcastle perspective. And if you go back to March, Newcastle went away to City. They lost the game 2-0. They're very competitive for the most part of that game. They conceded, I think, after about 15 minutes or so, but then came really back into the game with the better team, actually, before City scored a second. And that was in the midst of Newcastle's really poor run. They'd won once in 8 going into that match or around that game. So, they're going to be rested and refreshed, buoyant after week one. I think they can be a real nuisance for City, as you say, involved in Super Cup action on Wednesday. We've got no Gundogan, no Mahrez, obviously. De Bruyne now injured. You've that trip to Athens on Wednesday, this game taking place Saturday night. Stones was included in the Super Cup squad, despite Pep saying he wouldn't be ready for it. Ruben Dias is being kind of governed by concussion protocols. Not sure if he'll be back. Laporte seems to be leaving this week. Bernardo was missing in that midweek squad through illness as well. So I'm not sure what Man City side are going to be put out here. Obviously, it's going to be good enough to win the game, but you can start to see the market moving slightly against them. And, I kind of came into the week thinking Man City to win under the 4.5 goals would be a staple here, but I'm actually going to nominate Newcastle +1 on the Asian handicap, because I think it does offer value here. You need Man City to win this match by 2 goals or more for the bet to lose. It's something they've achieved quite regularly against the best opposition in the Premier League. It's something they're very accustomed to doing, especially at the Etihad. But I don't know, early season, disrupted preparation, a midfield that's missing a number of key cogs, a defence that's looking, makeshift, potentially. They were 1.53 for this match in March. They're now 1.64. So I think that's a fair enough difference when you consider the players that are absent, the scheduling difference, Newcastle being in a much better headspace, and also with a full squad, a stronger squad that went to the Etihad last time and applied themselves so well. So yeah, I think Newcastle +1 should give us a decent run here. I think they can be competitive.
Okay, yeah, particularly for a game like this, the Asian handicap line is a great way of getting involved for an interest bet here. And Adrian, I'll throw maybe this comment to you. How are Newcastle probably shorter to beat City than Madrid were in the Champions League semi-final? But I guess that just shows how brilliant they've started the season with that opening day. But it's not too much of a difference from where they were at the Etihad last season, as Mark alluded to. City 1.53 in the same fixture in March.
Yeah, that is a real surprise, what we saw on the screen there. But I watched that game, sort of had to do a bit of analysis on it, in particular the analysis of Tonali in the midfield, and I couldn't have been more impressed. I just think that unit just functions so well on the day. They're all-round midfielders, so they're all supremely fit. They're very athletic. They can all defend. They can all sit and play make from deep, or they can all play box to box. They can all play probably as an attacking midfielder as well. I think that unit has real potential, and they played brilliantly against Villa. Now, you can't get too carried away, but they'll take confidence from it. And I do think stylistically, they're the sort of team that can cause Manchester City problems. I do, because they're solid down the spine, as I've just explained. They're very good without the ball. They press well. And their game is all about turnovers. And on those turnovers, when they release a Gordon or an Isak or an Almiron, they have threats. And yeah, with this sort of patched up Manchester City rearguard, they might get opportunities in the game. And I can see them being extremely competitive. Last season, they were competitive. Mark's touched on the game at the Etihad. If you look at their games away at the top 6, those that finished in the top 6 last season, 3 goalless draws in there for Newcastle United. So they know how to go to places and keep things tight. They only conceded 4 goals in those games, those 5 games away to the top 6. So it's something they're more than capable of making life hard for Manchester City. So yeah, it leapt off the page for me, even though City almost always beat this handicap at home. We know that they do. Just feels that it might be the right time to catch them. Post midweek game, a bit of travelling involved, the De Bruyne injury. Yeah, a little bit of uncertainty over what the best team is. I think it just feels like City aren't in prime condition right now, whereas Newcastle look buoyant. So yeah, I think it gives us enough. It gives us enough to feel that +1 on the handicap at this price is going to give us a run for our money.
Absolutely, yes. So the rare, well, not rare agreement, but rare agreement so far on the podcast. The guys are both taking on Manchester City on the Asian handicap line, +1.0 in Newcastle's favour. And we will lock that in as a podcast selection. So that's Saturday's football taken care of. We will move on to